Today we will be talking about function notation. So function notation is a form that we can write equations in. We can use this as a quick way to evaluate functions for a given input. So if we have y equals 2x minus 8, I can write this as f of x equals 2x minus 8. And we read this as f of x. Let me write that a little bit better. F of x. So when we're evaluating functions, you're going to, for a specific value, you're going to substitute or plug in the value for x. So for number 1 here, also not to make this video a million years long, I'm going to do the odds and you're going to end up doing the evens. I think. Yeah. Alright, so if I have f of x equals x plus 7, and I want to find f of 5, I am going to plug in 5 for x. So 5 plus 7 is 12. So 12 is what f of 5 equals. And then if I wanted to do b, which is f of negative 1, do negative 1 plus 7, which gives me 6. So f of negative 1 is 6. F of negative 3, so negative 3 plus 7 gives me 4. So f of negative 3 is 4. And I lied, I'm going to do 2. We'll just do them all. And then we're going to do g of x, which is the same as f of x. It's just a different variable to not confuse it with the original f of x that we just used. So we have 3x minus 8, and we want to find g of 1. So we're going to do 3 times 1 minus 8. 3 times 1 is 3. Minus 8 gives me a negative 5. And g of negative 3. So I'm going to plug in negative 3 for x. Negative 3 times 3 gives me a negative 9. Minus 8 gives me a negative 17. And g of 0, when I plug in 0, 3 times 0 minus 8, so 3 times 0 is 0, minus 8 gives me a negative 8. Moving right along, I'm going to leave 3 for you to do, and then I'm going to move over here to number 4. So this one's a little bit different than the first two we did, because there are 2 x's. So all that means is I'm going to plug in x twice. This thing right here, this negative 4, is like an x. So I'm going to have negative 4 squared minus a negative 4. Well, negative 4 squared is 16. And minus a negative 4 gives me a plus 4. And 16 plus 4 gives me 20. So f of negative 4 is 20. And then for f of negative 1, I'm going to plug in negative 1 for x. So negative 1 squared minus a negative 1. Negative 1 squared gives me 1. Minus a negative 1 gives me a plus 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So f of negative 1 is 2. And then I want to find f of 7. So I'm going to plug in 7 for x in both places. So I have 7 squared minus, I'm going to put the 7 in parentheses. So 7 squared minus 7. So 7 squared is 49. And 49 minus 7 is 42. So let's do number 5. So number 5 is h of x equals 3x squared plus 7. Once again, it's similar to f of x, it's just a different letter. So I'm going to plug in negative 4 for x. So 3 times negative 4 squared plus 7. So using order of operations, I will start with the exponent. So negative 4 squared is 16. So 3 times 16 is 48 plus 7 gives me 55. And then I need to do h of negative 2. So 3 times negative 2 squared plus 7. So negative 2 squared is 4. Because I start with my exponent. 3 times 4 is 12. And 12 plus 7 is 19. So h of negative 2 is 19. And last but not least, h of 0. So 3 times 0 squared plus 7. 0 squared is 0. So 3 times 0 plus 7. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 7 gives me 7. So h of 0 is 7. So then I'm going to do 6 over here. This one's a little more complicated. So f of x equals negative x squared plus 6x minus 4. So f of negative 3. So I'm going to plug in negative 3 for every x that I see. So negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 minus 4. So negative 3 squared, that's where we're going to start, right here. Negative 3 squared is 9, but then I have the negative out front that stays, plus, and then 6 times negative 3 gives me negative 18 minus 4. So I get negative 9 minus 18 minus 4. So when I subtract all of those, I get negative 31. I'll rewrite that 31 just a little bit better. All right, and then I need to do f of negative 1. So I'm going to do negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 4. So once again, I'm going to start with my exponent. Negative 1 squared gives me 1, but bringing down that negative gives me a negative 1. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6 minus 4. So negative 1 minus 6 minus 4 gives me negative 11. So when you need to find f of negative 1 for this function, you get negative 11. This is very similar to what we did last time when we plugged them in using tables. This is just a different way to represent it. So if I wanted to find f of 5, I'm going to plug in 5 for the x. So negative 5 squared plus 6 times positive 5 minus 4. And if you notice in this problem, this is where parentheses really play a big part, because you square it before you deal with the negative. So 5 squared is 25, but it becomes negative. 6 times 5 is 30 minus 4. And when I add negative 25, 30, and negative 4, I get 1. So f of 5 is 1.